Picture two people interviewing for the same teaching job. Candidate A walks in polished. They make strong eye contact, hand over a slick portfolio, and have a crisp answer for every question. Candidate B is a little quieter. Their answers are thoughtful, but they don't sound rehearsed. Their portfolio is modest. If you've ever sat on a hiring committee, you know exactly which person usually gets the job. The polished candidate naturally feels like the safer bet. But research into teacher attention tracks what happens 5 years down the road. Usually, the highly polished candidate has moved on. The quieter candidate is often the one still there, and the reason 3 other teachers stayed too. This happens because an interview measures how well a person can talk to adults for 45 minutes, but teaching is a year-long marathon of building trust with children. Because the two skills are so different, being a great interviewee tells you almost nothing about how that person will actually perform in a classroom. Look at this diagram. We fall into this trap because of the halo effect. When an evaluator sees one standout trait in an interview, like a confident speaking style or a warm smile, that single trait glows. It unconsciously tricks our brains into assuming the candidate is also great at classroom management or long-term reliability, even when we haven't seen any evidence for it. We also tend to favor people who remind us of ourselves or of a star hire from the past. This similarity bias makes us feel comfortable, but it often leads committees to ignore whether the person's specific temperament actually fits the needs of the students they'll be serving. Especially right now, as schools rush to lock in contracts for the fall, it's easy to rely on a gut feel. But focusing on the tip of the iceberg, that initial interview polish, can hide the underwater reality of whether a teacher will actually excel over the next 5 years. If we can't trust the interview room, we have to look at the classroom. To find the teachers who quietly do excellent work for years, you have to watch for 3 specific signs that can't be faked. Start by looking for classroom presence. You aren't looking for a teacher who raises their voice. Watch how a room naturally settles around a person. If kids' eyes track the teacher even when they are speaking softly, you're seeing a presence that was built through time and respect. Then look for engagement. A room can be quiet because kids are being compliant, even if they've mentally left the building. True engagement looks like kids leaning in, asking their own follow-up questions, and volunteering ideas without being prompted. Finally, listen for the feedback no one asked for. A formal reference letter is written to impress, but a colleague who mentions offhand that kids fight to get into her class is sharing a much more reliable signal. These casual, unprompted comments from parents and peers reveal the reputation a teacher has built over real time. These traits matter because they take months or years to develop. You can build a polished portfolio in a weekend, but you can't manufacture a room full of kids who are genuinely leaning in. Finding these teachers is only the first half of the job. Because these quietly excellent teachers don't cause drama or complain, they often go unnoticed by leadership. While the squeaky wheel gets the attention, the steady teacher can feel invisible until they quietly hand in a resignation letter. Keeping them requires moving away from generic one-size-fits-all training. When a school offers a teacher a growth opportunity specifically tied to personal passions, like a new certification or a chance to build a specific program, it signals that the school sees them as an individual, not an interchangeable part. It also requires regular, low-stakes check-ins. If the only time a leader talks to a teacher is during a formal evaluation, they'll miss the early signs of burnout. A simple conversation about how things are actually going can catch a problem months before it leads to a resignation. Finally, schools have to actively protect a teacher's workload. Conscientious teachers will say yes to every extra committee and after-school duty until they break. Leadership has to be the one to set the boundaries, ensuring their best people have the time they need to actually teach. Retaining these teachers isn't a passive outcome. It's the result of a leader who notices the people who don't demand attention and steps in to protect them. 5 years later, the consequences of these choices become visible. On one side, the flashy candidate has moved on, leaving behind an empty classroom. On the other, the quiet candidate has stayed, and the room is covered in 5 years of student art and history. Replacing a teacher who leaves early costs a school thousands in recruiting and training. But for the students, the cost is higher. They lose the relational trust they spent a year building, and the school culture has to reset yet again. The teacher who stays for a decade becomes the person who understands the school's history, its families, and how the culture actually functions. They provide a stability that no new textbook or curriculum purchase can replicate. This is why the hiring meeting and the quiet check-in are so vital. They aren't administrative chores. They are the mechanism that actually delivers the school's mission to the kids. Your school's strategic plan matters. But the most significant decision you'll make for your students this year isn't about a program. It's about the person you place at the front of the room.